Yeah, you can just step back and then the next person can step up. That's perfect. I'm just testing the mics. Yes. It is as not. Okay, sound is great. Great. Yes, I'm so sorry. Yes.
Fred, can you tell Chuck what people, the best way to introduce you? Fred Robb, former associate director.
Yes, you saw my confused look. It was like, he's lost.
Yeah, we almost definitely can. But I will ask you. Yes, just connect with Tony after the event. Tony is in a floral press. She was just here. Yes, you know Tony, and she will fill out a form and almost definitely have to do that. Not to me.
So you have Eric, Cameron,
And Wendy and I are and then we have WSU.
Observatory.
with them, did the works.
Yes, yes. I really like her, but you know,
She just here next summer.
no, she's a 2-year thing, so she's here through the spring.
You missed that part.
You'll learn to be supportive. She's smart and all that. And then we've got a great intern just for like 6 weeks. She's ready to inspire. She's graduated, I think, from WSU, I forget which college, so. And that's it. And Corey writes a little bit.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Just her, what's he doing other stuff?
Yeah, he is the assistant editor, so most of his stuff is in this corporate reports. You know,
I did not know he'd become this. Appreciate it.
that's what they hire him for, so. He does a lot of technology stuff, where he gets not engaged with,
Great.
figures that out, so he really is.
I'll see her behind the podium.
Good to go? All right, well, good afternoon and welcome. My name is David Replog. I serve as Vice President for Federal Programs here at TRIDEC. As quick background, TRIDEC was founded in 1963 with a core mission of working closely with Washington's congressional delegation to advocate for the community's federal priorities, particularly at that time those tied closely with Hanford's vital role in America's Cold War era national security efforts. Today, the Hanford side has shifted its focus to cleanup, and new federal missions have come into our community. Those include the world-class research and development taking place at Pacific Northwest National Laboratory, along with the Nobel Prize-winning discoveries being made at the Laser Interferometer Gravitational Wave Observatory. All three of these efforts are critically important to the Tri-City community and to the nation, whether that's protecting human health and the environment, solving our most pressing scientific challenges, or helping humans to better understand the universe. These are vital federal investments. Today we'll be hearing more about this work and why it is so important. First, however, it is my honor and pleasure to introduce Senator Patty Murray. Throughout her tenure in the United States Senate, the Tri-Cities has had no greater champion than Senator Murray. She's delivered for us time and time again, for Hanford, for PNNL, for LIGO, for transportation and infrastructure projects, and so much more. And today she is here once again, fighting for our community and for our priorities. So thank you, Senator, for recognizing the importance of these federal investments here in the Tri-Cities, and I'll hand it over to you.
All right, well, thank you, David. It is great to be with you, and all of you, thank you so much for joining us today. It is always a thrill to tour PNNL and get a glimpse of the future. Today was no exception. I just had a great tour of the Grid Storage Launchpad facility, where scientists are really pushing the boundaries of energy storage and developing the next generation of batteries. This is work that will literally power innovation, and it is just the latest example of how PNNL is leading the way to address national and even global challenges. This year marks the 60th anniversary of the Pacific Northwest National Lab. In that time, they have made an incredible impact. Over 3,000 patents are connected to this work. Over 200 companies can trace their roots back to PNNL, and it has helped develop breakthroughs we use in nuclear cleanup, cancer treatment, national security, counterterrorism, energy, and a lot more. But despite all of that, at a time when we should and want to be celebrating PNNL's rich legacy of innovation and discovery, we are seeing President Trump trying to destroy it with painful, pointless cuts. His budget would absolutely gut PNNL, slashing DOE investments by over a third, with funding for some programs eliminated outright. That would devastate groundbreaking research, not to mention the entire Tri-Cities economy and the thousands of people whose jobs would be put on the chopping block. The Trump budget would mean more than 1,000 jobs lost here at PNNL. And nationally, across the entire lab system, it would be a whopping 7,700 jobs wiped out. And let's not forget, it's not just the cuts he's proposed, there's also billions in funding that he is now freezing or redirecting across the federal government with no regard for consequences or actually the law. We passed into law significant investments in major wind, solar, vehicle technologies, and biological and environmental research and development work that is now happening at PNNL. And yet Trump is trying to ignore those laws and block those investments, even if it means pushing hardworking researchers out of their jobs and really putting our country behind. Meanwhile, Trump's budget would also hinder the Hanford cleanup at a critical time, leaving key milestones unmet and raising the cost of the cleanup in the long run, not to mention increasing the safety and environmental risks for the Tri-Cities. So know this, I am going to fight to keep the funding for Hanford. I'm going to do right by the Tri-Cities, the entire state of Washington, and the workers who power this cleanup. And I'm going to make it absolutely clear to everybody, Trump's vision is unacceptable. Instead of keeping our nation on the cutting edge of science, he wants to put us on the edge of cutting science to pieces, throwing away decades of expertise and world leadership and sabotaging research for decades to come. Well, let me just say, not as long as I have anything to say about this, and as Vice Chair of the Appropriations Committee, I have a lot to say about it. My plan is simple. I'm just going to take Trump's budget and rip it up, put it where it belongs, in the trash. And then I'm going to do what I have always done, roll up my sleeves, reach across the aisle, and work on writing bipartisan funding bills that protect our investments in PNNL and here in the Tri-Cities. And it saves the jobs that President is thoughtlessly seeking to eliminate. I will not pretend that this will be easy, but there is, I want you to know, there is bipartisan support to reject these cuts and protect our nation's legacy as a research powerhouse. For example, Trump's budget calls for shutting down a LIGO observatory like the one at Hanford. This work won a Nobel Prize. It has allowed us to observe gravitation waves and detect black holes colliding, the kinds of breakthroughs that are kind of sci-fi. Shutting one of our two LIGO facilities down basically shuts us out of the game entirely, since you need multiple labs across great distances working together to get a full picture. I'll be honest, I don't think Trump has even heard of LIGO, let alone understands what it does or why his plan to cut it has astronomical impact. But there are members on both sides of the aisle who understand how short-sighted these cuts are, which is why I worked in a bipartisan way to make sure that our Commerce, Justice, Science Appropriations Bill that we passed in the Senate committee resoundingly rejects Trump's proposal and instead reaffirms our support for the continued operation of LIGO's Hanford Observatory. Let's be clear, we have a long ways to go to get our bipartisan funding bills passed into law, but the progress that we have made shows there is a bipartisan appetite to stand by our researchers, and there is a bipartisan will to stand up to some of these absurd cuts and stand for our country's long history of innovation. I will be doing everything I can to make sure that our bipartisan consensus wins the day, because the way to honor the incredible 60-year legacy of PNNL is to continue to build on it. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to some experts, and I want to start with Dr. Allison Campbell.
Thank you, Senator. I'm Allison Campbell. I am a retired Associate Laboratory Director from the Pacific Northwest National Lab, and I wanted to focus my remarks on some of the details of the impacts that the President's budget will have on the laboratory. PNNL currently has about $1.6 billion, about 70% of which comes from the Department of Energy. It employs about 6,400 individuals. About 4,000 of those are located here in our community in the Tri-Cities. If President Trump's budget is enacted as proposed, as the Senator has said, it calls for extreme cuts in non-defense spending, specifically targeting funding for energy innovation, environmental research, and nuclear non-proliferation. As the Senator said, if that were enacted, that would result in about 1,100 jobs at PNNL being lost. That corresponds to about 20% of the laboratory. I want to give you a little specifics about the programs within DOE that are affected and how that impacts the laboratory. There's a budget request for about $880 million, which is 74% below last year's budget for DOE's Office of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energies. Entire programs, including clean energy initiatives, would be fully eliminated. If they're not eliminated, many would be deeply cut. PNNL is a leader in this area, does a significant amount of work to advance energy efficiency and affordable, abundant energy technologies. DOE's Office of Biological and Environmental Sciences budget request from the President is $394 million, or 56% below previous year's enacted budget. And it eliminates essentially all of BER's Earth and Environmental Sciences programs, which is where nearly all of PNNL's work for BER takes place. The budget also proposes the elimination of the Atmospheric Radiation Measurement Program, or the ARM program, which is a National Scientific User Facility. And this would not only lose staff and expertise, but it would erase 30 years of data sets from 7 continents, 5 oceans, that are critical to understanding our Earth's atmosphere. DOE's Defense Nuclear Nonproliferation budget, which is the budget that is aimed at keeping nuclear and radiological material out of the hands of our adversaries, as well as understanding what they are actually doing, is a critical part of our nuclear security here in the United States. The budget proposal there is $2.3 billion. It's about $110 million below last year, 4%. Seems modest on the front, but that's a huge cut in this area, and PNNL is DNN's #1 laboratory, so that cut would significantly impact this laboratory and the staff here. All of these programs are important to advancing our national and energy security, and even minor cuts have huge impacts. Just to reiterate the job losses, we're talking about 1,100 jobs being cut. And then, of course, there's the ripple effect through the Tri-Cities, because there are other jobs that depend upon the workers that are here. And so I think we would see thousands more jobs being lost here in the Tri-Cities. Research in new technologies, energy efficiency, transportation, environmental sciences would be completely curtailed or eliminated at PNNL. Work to prevent nuclear material from falling into the wrong hands and understanding the actions of our adversaries would be stopped or slowed down, making us less safe. All of this represents a core loss of critical expertise and capability at the laboratory and for the nation. You just can't replace that. It'll take years to replace something that could be wiped out in a year. Top-tier scientists may relocate internationally. We know that our adversaries are wooing and trying to recruit U.S. scientists today. Reductions in the energy research program undermines our U.S. leadership in grid modernization, which you saw today, Senator, affordable energy technologies, and earth and environmental resilience. National implications include brain drain, stalled innovation pipelines, and damage to long-term investments in clean energy, environmental sciences, and our nuclear threats. In summary, huge cuts, loss of core capabilities that will take decades to repair, loss of critical data and data sets that are irreplaceable, in my opinion, and significant economic fallout, not just in our region, but nationally. Although the president sets the budget and the administration's priority, we're fortunate that Congress does hold final budget authority. And as you know, several members are working hard to address the president's budget, and Senator Murray, are totally grateful for the hard work that you're doing and have pledged to really take action against this budget. Thank you. And with that, I'd like to introduce Chuck Torelli, Chairman of the Hanford Communities.
Thank you. So I am Chuck Torelli, excuse me, Chair of Hanford Communities. Hanford Communities consists of elected officials from our local region, Benton, Franklin County, Pasco, Richland, West Richland, and Kennewick. And basically, we advocate for safe, transparent, and efficient cleanup of the Hanford site. So with that, I want to begin by thanking our entire congressional delegation, especially Senator Murray, for the continued support of the cleanup effort, a mission recognized as being nationally important. This is kind of a history lesson, but Hanford is the largest complex remediation project in the U.S. history. We are the biggest and the most technically challenging cleanup site. We're also just a few miles away. So we are really vested in safe, efficient cleanup. The site, more history, site played a pivotal effort during the World War II and during the Cold War, but the end result of that is 56 million gallons of waste in aging tanks. It is river corridor sites such as the 324 building that presents a potential hazard for our community. In large part, the groundwater had to be remediated from both radiological and chemical contamination. And because of the efforts of Senator Murray, Senator Cantwell, and Representative Newhouse, these hazards are being mitigated today. Beyond the technical challenges, we need to recognize Hanford's unique scientific and cultural ecosystem. The workforce here includes thousands of scientists, engineers, crafts members, and technicians. They have specialized knowledge. Inadequate funding leads to slowed cleanup. It leads to unnecessary layoffs. It leads to increased future costs, and it weakens project oversight. This isn't just a workforce out here. This is a culture of innovation, safety, and stewardship that's been cultivated over decades. Excuse me. Hanford has a spirit of endurance, innovation, and responsibility, and it demands sustained federal commitment, not just to finish the job, but to finish it right. And by that, it's protecting our community, preserving the institutional knowledge we have, honoring the legacy of those who built the Hanford site. Deferred investment doesn't save money, it compounds all the problems we've discussed. Consistent funding ensures progress, public health, and the infrastructure that is necessary to see this mission through. I worked at the plutonium finishing plant for 30 plus years. I watched volatile funding, and I can tell you from personal experience, jobs that could have been done in weeks or months then took years, and it was never cheaper. It never gets cheaper. If you want inexpensive, you do it now and you do it consistently. So this is not just a call for funding. It's a call to fulfill the promise of protection for our communities, the ones who live next to the Hanford site. It's a call for progress for the country because this technology and these techniques are exportable to other countries. We have an opportunity there, and it is accountability for the taxpayer. We don't want to waste money. So thank you so much for your time, and I am pleased to introduce Dr. Fred Robb, who's a former, you know what, Fred, I lost the bubble. He's really important. He worked at LIGO. He did a lot of great operational things, and he is going to be a lot smarter sounding than me. Thank you, Fred.
Thank you, Chuck. My name's Fred Robb. 37 years ago, I worked with colleagues to write the proposal to build LIGO. And this year is the 10th anniversary of LIGO's first ever detection of the space quakes launched from the merger of black holes a billion light years ago. It's also the year that Congress is being asked by the administration to forfeit preeminence in American science and engineering. The proposed cuts to NSF, DOE Office of Science, and NASA budgets would cause huge damage to research today, but more importantly, it would devastate early career researchers. It's worthwhile to ask, what does preeminence in science cost? So I did an exercise. I totaled up the half-century of investment by the National Science Foundation going to Caltech and MIT to build LIGO. And the answer is that from the first exploratory research by Ray Weiss at MIT in the early 1970s until 2025, when we've detected over 300 mergers of black holes and neutron stars that could never be seen before, it totals up on average to 10 pennies per US resident per year. Over that half century, it's about $5 per person. If you think your taxes are high, it's not because of LIGO. This does not count, to be fair, the NSF support to many other universities across the United States and to some of the foreign governments that have skin in the game because this is an important field. But if we added that extra NSF funding to other universities, it might raise a couple of pennies per year, but not more than that. So it begs the question, do we really want to forfeit preeminence in science and engineering to save this kind of money? And it's not just the fundamental science that's a threat. Birthing this new field of gravitational wave astronomy has motivated and continues to advance technologies and innovations in lasers, optics and materials, space science, precision classical and quantum engineering, quantum metrology, information technology, including AI. It has allowed us to recruit from around the world and train some of the brightest innovators in the world. And they go on to careers in a variety of places, including US tech firms, defense and space industries, national labs, and teach your kids in colleges and universities. The biggest damage is not that my life's work is going to be crippled. The biggest damage is to the next generation of researchers. A single year of the proposed massive decreases in funding science and engineering will cause 1 to 2 decades at minimum of damage by throttling back this bright pipeline of students and early career researchers. To mint a new PhD, it takes about 12 to 16 years of training after high school. 4 years to get that bachelor's degree, 5 to 6 for graduate study towards a PhD under a mentor, then another 3 or 6 years of residency as a postdoctoral scholar where you learn to rely less on being mentored and become a mentor to junior colleagues. That's a long time, a decade and a half to mint a PhD. The question before Congress is, do you want to send the message to these aspiring innovators that the US no longer values their contributions to our innovation technology and our innovation economy? Thank you.
Thank you so much, really appreciate it. With that, we're happy to take any questions. Oh, no.
Don't worry, it's only bring backup batteries.
We have a scientist here who can fix it.
I need all the help I can get. Well, with the budget cuts that you mentioned, some of these scientists are planning to try and possibly look for jobs outside of the U.S. What does this mean for the nation's scientific research moving forward? What does that do to, maybe our ability to research and get some of these topics that we can't cover anymore?
It's a devastating message to young people who want to become scientists and create the innovations of the future that will power our country. What it means is they will go somewhere else. I've talked to some of them that are being recruited by other countries. That means that research will not happen here. It will happen in another country who is our competitor. And it will cost us in the long run, both through young people who leave, but also our ability to compete in a global economy.
I'm kind of curious about, I know that previously you were mentioning how you got a lot of bipartisan interest in trying to find a way to save these. But I'm kind of curious to how plausible you think that is going to be going forward, because obviously there's going to be a lot of support needed to try and push some legislation to change, but how possible do you think that is?
There's no doubt it's an uphill battle. In the Senate, I've got bipartisan support. We worked the CJS bill through that funds LIGO, put that back in. Now writing the energy and water bill on a bipartisan basis to get out of our committee. But the fact is that we have to negotiate with the House in the future, and they by and large have adopted the president's budget. So we need to not only get our bills passed in the Senate, we need to convince our House colleagues to do the same and to meet ours. And their bills were not bipartisan, they were partisan. So it's an uphill battle, but I don't give up, so.
And then also in the case that, not that I want to say this is what's going to happen, but in the case that, there aren't changes able to be made, what is kind of your plan, or what things do you think can happen to kind of, make up for lost jobs and make up for the hit that could potentially affect
If the budgets get enacted as proposed by the president, it is going to be impossible to make up the economic loss to this community, really to our country, to our scientific research. I mean, if you just take LIGO, if that's gone, you don't just say, oh, in 2 years we will bring that back. It's gone. To much of the research that you heard about earlier, once you lose your basic capacity, whether it's the equipment or the trained personnel or the incoming personnel that you are training, you can't just bring that back.
Going back to some of those, sorry. No, go ahead. Some of those biological and environmental, I don't know if you might be better to speak on that, but those programs that are being cut, maybe even entirely, what is that research and what does it go towards for our country? Can you
Well,
explain that a
Dr.
little bit
Campbell
better?
can probably
I'll try to take a stab at
do
that.
that.
A lot of the Office of Biological and Environmental Research, which is part of the Office of Science, so it's fundamental research that takes place at PNNL. They run the ARM program, which we talked about, and that's really an observatory that's looking about what's going on in our environment, in our oceans, seas, those sorts of ice, thank you. And it collects data so that we have these huge data sets that scientists that can then use to try to understand what the phenomena are that are occurring. And then make predictions about the future, whether it's snowpack, drought, those sorts of things. Gone. A lot of the work is in soil science that occurs there, and understanding, how to make sure that our soil is rich, how it might sequester carbon and be involved in the carbon cycle. So agricultural applications, so the health and well-being of our crops as well. Our shorelines, our coastal systems, what's going on there, because that's where you tend to get a lot of severe weather occurring, is at coastal interfaces. Gone. There's a lot of modeling done to understand our Earth system, and so they create both regional and global models of our Earth system, how the oceans, the winds, the atmosphere, the land, how they all interact to create phenomenon that we understand, like El Nino and those sorts of phenomenon. And then they use that understanding to make predictions, as I said, about whether it's regionally, about snowpack or fire potential in a region, or globally, because we're all obviously connected. Those are the ones off the top of my head that are all significantly, zeroed out, frankly, under this budget.
So it sounds like even before the budget's instituted that PNNL is already taking steps. There was a report out that they're already looking at cutting 130 positions by October or so. Didn't know if you could verify if that's true or not. And just other, and counter to all this is that I've heard some federal officials say, well, we don't decide how Battelle runs the lab. That's up to them. We just provide funding. So it's not, the budget isn't what's leading to the specific cuts.
Well, David can probably answer better than I can, but I can tell you that right now they're currently operating under what's called a continuing resolution at last year's budget levels. And they're looking at the president's budget and what the numbers are and what the House has done and the potential that we have. And looking at those numbers, PNNL is right now deciding what they need to do to be able to live under those numbers that are out there. And it is not sustainable for them to just hope for the best. They have to plan on what they are seeing. And that's why we're seeing those cuts come down. And if we're not able to pass bills into law and we operate under another continuing resolution, they will definitely not just have those cuts, but more coming. That's right.
And I would just add, and perhaps Dr. Campbell can also add to it, because I know she has extensive experience, but the way that the work that the National Laboratory does is funded is really on a competitive basis in a lot of cases across multiple laboratories and different DOE programs. And so in general, although Battelle manages Pacific Northwest National Laboratory and does the day-to-day operations, it's funded for specific work. And so if that funding is no longer there, they can't continue to do that specific work. Did I get that right? All right. One other thing I just wanted to touch on when you mentioned the 130 cuts. One of the things that we've learned from some of our predecessors here at TRIDEC is that the Tri-Cities as a community went through a significant economic challenge in the late 80s as we were transitioning from plutonium production at Hanford to cleanup at Hanford. And at that time, 30 to 40 years ago, about 25% of the people who lived in the community, of the jobs in the community, were funded by federal dollars, either at Hanford or PNNL, and about 50% of the income into the community. And so any downturns in federal funding were really impactful. And while they still most certainly are, in part thanks to Senator Murray and many of our partners throughout the community, we've been really working to grow and diversify our economy, in part also because of the great work that the National Laboratory is doing. They attract companies that want to locate here or connect us with other companies so we can recruit them to come to the Tri-Cities to try to grow and diversify our economy. So although these cuts certainly, if they do come to pass, and I know that Senator Murray is going to do everything that she can to prevent that from happening, but today those numbers that I gave earlier are about cut in half. So about 12 or 13% of the jobs in our community now are federally funded, and about 25% of the income, so still a very significant impact. But we are working again with, and thanks to Senator Murray for supporting our efforts to diversify the economy. That we're excited about the direction that we've been moving, so we aren't quite as dependent as we were 30, 40 years ago.
I don't understand why a continuing resolution would be even worse for the next fiscal year.
Because it would run the government based on what funding was from last year, and I will caveat this. It depends on exactly what the language is in the continuing resolution, but if it was just a date change, we're doing what we did last year, moving it forward, it is a cut now. So they would be operating at the lowest possible level. And that is going to have an impact. Now, if they do the president's budget cut, it would be even worse. But we can't operate on a continuing resolution because that just says we're doing what we did last year and the year before. Any new funding, any new research, any new programs, any infrastructure programs, the new highways won't be funded. New energy core projects won't be funded. So it would be very, very devastating to the work here. And not to mention research at WSU, which is if you fund a project that didn't need to be funded anymore, it's wasted dollars, but you aren't doing the new kind of research or buildings or facilities that they need.